Story 1. The Repeating Mile Marker. Marcus Chen had been driving long-haul routes for 12 years, transporting refrigerated goods across the Midwest. He prided himself on knowing every highway, every truck stop, and every shortcut between Chicago and Denver. On the night of October 14th, 2019, that confidence would be shattered on a stretch of Highway 283 through northwestern Kansas, a road he'd traveled at least 50 times before. The load was standard: frozen meat products heading to a distribution center in Colorado. Marcus left the warehouse at 9:47 p.m., planning to drive through the night to make his morning delivery window. The weather was clear, temperature in the low 40s, and traffic was non-existent once he cleared the outskirts of Norton. Highway 283 stretched ahead, like a black ribbon under his headlights, the kind of empty road where you could drive for 30 minutes without seeing another vehicle. Around 1:15 a.m., Marcus noticed mile marker 47. Nothing unusual about it, just a standard green reflective sign catching his headlights. He'd passed it countless times before. He adjusted his CB radio, hearing only static, and took a sip from his thermos of coffee. The drone of the engine and the white lines disappearing under his hood created that hypnotic rhythm every trucker knows. His GPS showed him maintaining a steady 65 miles per hour, right on schedule. 10 minutes later, he saw mile marker 47 again. At first, Marcus thought he'd misread it. Maybe it was mile marker 48 or 46, and his tired brain had filled in the wrong number. But as he passed it, he clearly saw the 47 in his side mirror. He glanced at his GPS. It showed him progressing forward normally, the blue dot moving steadily along the highway route. The odometer was ticking up. Everything indicated forward motion. Another 10 minutes passed. Mile marker 47 appeared again in his headlights. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He checked his speedometer, still 65. The GPS still showed forward progress, but there was that same mile marker, positioned on the right side of the road exactly as before. Same slight lean to the left, where the post had settled over the years. He'd driven this route enough to recognize individual markers. He grabbed his CB radio. "This is Polar Bear heading south on 283. Anybody out there?" Static answered him. He tried his cell phone. No signal, which wasn't unusual in this area. The dashboard clock read 1:38 a.m. Marcus decided to push his speed to 75, watching his mirrors carefully. The mile marker disappeared behind him. He counted in his head, calculating the time it should take to reach mile marker 46 or 48, whichever direction he was actually traveling. The empty highway stretched endlessly ahead, his headlights creating a tunnel of light through absolute darkness. No other cars, no buildings, just scrubland and the occasional fence post marking the edge of someone's ranch. 15 minutes of faster driving. Then his headlights caught the reflective green sign. Mile marker 47. "No," Marcus said aloud. His hands were sweating on the steering wheel. This wasn't possible. He'd burned at least 20 miles of fuel. The engine temperature was normal. The transmission was fine. Everything mechanical was functioning perfectly. But he was passing the same mile marker for the 4th time. He pulled onto the shoulder, the truck's air brakes hissing as he came to a stop. He left the engine running and the lights on, then climbed down from the cab. The night air was cold and still, too still. Marcus realized he couldn't hear anything except his truck's engine. No wind, no insects, no distant animal sounds. The silence was absolute and wrong. He walked back to the mile marker and touched it. Solid metal, cold under his fingers. Real. He pulled out his phone and took a picture, the flash bright in the darkness. Still no signal. He walked back to his truck, studying the highway in both directions. The white lines were perfectly straight, disappearing into darkness. His GPS still showed him on Highway 283, but the map wasn't updating anymore. The blue dot sat frozen. Marcus climbed back into the cab and made a decision. He would drive backwards, south to north, back the way he'd come. He carefully turned the truck around on the empty highway, using both lanes. The maneuver took several minutes, but he completed it successfully. Now, facing north, he accelerated. 20 minutes of driving. Mile marker 47 appeared ahead of him. He was approaching it from the opposite direction, but it was the same marker. He could see the same lean, the same paint chips on the post. Marcus felt his breathing become rapid. His heart was pounding against his ribs. This violated every law of physics, every rule of reality he'd built his life around. He stopped the truck in the middle of the road. Both lanes were empty, had been empty for over an hour now. Where were the other vehicles? Even at 2 a.m., he should have seen someone. A car, another truck, something. The radio crackled. "Marker 47, a voice said through heavy static. Marcus grabbed the CB handset. "Hello? Who is this?" "Can't leave Marker 47. The voice continued, barely audible. It sounded male, desperate. "Trying for 3 days. 3 days?" Marcus shouted into the handset. "What do you mean, 3 days?" Static swallowed the response. Then, "Same mile over and over. Fuel gauge doesn't move. Can't stop driving." Marcus looked at his fuel gauge. It read 3/4 full, exactly what it had read when he'd first noticed the mile marker. Over an hour of driving, and the needle hadn't moved at all. He tried the radio again. "Where are you? What truck are you in?" No response. Just static. Marcus made another decision. He would try the other direction again, but this time he would count everything. Every second, every revolution of the wheels. He would document this impossible situation. He pulled out his phone and started a video recording, propping it on the dashboard. "October 15th, 2:17 a.m., he said to the camera. "I've been trapped on a 1-mile stretch of Highway 283 for over an hour. I'm going to try driving south again. Current odometer reading is 287,432 miles. He drove. The video camera recorded everything. The speedometer steady at 65, the dark highway ahead, the white lines streaming past. Marcus counted in his head. At 65 miles per hour, he should cover a mile in just under a minute. He counted to 60, then 90, then 120. Mile marker 47 appeared in his headlights again. He checked the odometer. It still read 287,432 miles. The numbers hadn't changed. "This isn't happening," Marcus whispered to himself. But the evidence was undeniable. He was moving. The wheels were turning. The engine was running. The landscape was passing by his windows. But he wasn't traveling. He was somehow staying in the same mile of highway, passing the same marker over and over, while his truck went through all the motions of forward progress. The radio crackled again. "Marker 47, marker 47, marker 47. The voice had changed, becoming mechanical, almost robotic. Marcus grabbed a road flare from his emergency kit. At the next appearance of mile marker 47, he stopped the truck, ran to the marker, and tied the lit flare to the post. The red light flared bright in the darkness. He ran back to his truck and drove forward. 10 minutes later, the mile marker appeared, with his flare still burning on the post. He stopped again and checked. Same flare, same knot he'd tied. Impossible, but real. Marcus sat in his cab, trying to control his panic. "Think like a trucker," he told himself. Trucks ran on logic. Engines, transmissions, loads, routes, all logical. There had to be a logical explanation. But no logical explanation existed for driving in a loop on a straight highway. while all his instruments showed normal travel. He decided to try stopping completely. Maybe if he just waited, whatever this was would end. He pulled to the shoulder, shut off the engine, and set his air brakes. The silence rushed in immediately. That same wrong silence. Absence of everything. He checked his phone. 2:43 a.m. Still no signal. Marcus climbed into his sleeper berth, leaving the curtain open so he could watch the road. He would wait until dawn. Surely this couldn't continue in daylight. He lay there, watching the empty highway, fighting the urge to sleep. At 3:15 a.m., headlights appeared in his mirrors. Marcus sat up, relief flooding through him. Another vehicle. He climbed out of his truck, waving his arms as the headlights approached. It was another semi, similar to his own. The truck slowed as it approached mile marker 47, then stopped. The driver climbed down. Marcus could see him in the truck's headlights. A heavy-set man, maybe 60 years old, wearing a flannel jacket. The man looked at Marcus, then at the mile marker, then back at Marcus. His face was gray with exhaustion. "How long have you been here?" the man asked. "About 2 hours," Marcus replied. "You?" The man laughed, a sound without humor. "I've lost count. Days, I think. Maybe weeks. My watch stopped. My phone died. I've been driving and driving, passing that marker over and over." He pointed at the mile marker 47 sign. "That fucking sign." "There's no way out?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. "I've tried everything," the man said. "Forward, backward, fast, slow. I've tried to crash the truck just to make something different happen. The truck won't crash. I ran it into the ditch, it just reset back on the road. I'm starting to think I died. Maybe we both died, and this is hell. Hell is a truck driver trapped on 1 mile of highway forever." Marcus shook his head. "No. There's got to be an explanation. A rational..." "Rational?" The man laughed again. "Nothing about this is rational. I've watched my fuel gauge stay full while the engine runs. I've counted over 10,000 passes of that mile marker. 10,000. Do the math on that." Before Marcus could respond, the man climbed back into his truck. "Good luck," he called out. "Maybe you'll figure out what I couldn't. But I doubt it. I think we're here forever." The truck pulled away, accelerating down the highway. Marcus watched its taillights disappear into the darkness. He waited, counting in his head. At exactly 10 minutes, headlights appeared again from the north. The same truck, approaching mile marker 47 from the other direction. The truck didn't stop this time. It passed Marcus, the driver staring straight ahead with empty eyes, and continued south. Marcus understood. The man had accepted his fate. He was just driving now, maybe forever, passing the same mile marker for eternity. Marcus got back in his truck. Dawn had to come eventually. The sun had to rise. He would wait for dawn and see if daylight changed anything. He checked his phone. 3:47 a.m. He watched the clock. 4 minutes passed. Then the phone's clock reset to 3:47 a.m. He watched it happen. The numbers literally rolled backward. Time itself wasn't working right here. Marcus started his engine. He couldn't just wait. Waiting achieved nothing. He had to try something different. He accelerated hard, pushing the truck to 80 miles per hour, watching the road ahead. The mile marker appeared. He kept his speed up, passing it, counting seconds. It appeared again, and again, and again. The faster he drove, the faster the marker repeated. He slammed on the brakes, the truck shuddering to a stop. In his mirrors, he could see the mile marker behind him. He stared at it, breathing hard, trying to think. The radio crackled. His own voice came through the speaker. "Marker 47. Marker 47. Marker 47. Marcus realized with creeping horror that he was hearing his future self, or his past self, or some other version of himself trapped in this same loop. How many Marcus Chens were driving this mile of highway? How many copies of himself, all trapped, all trying to escape? He made one final attempt. He turned off the highway, driving straight out into the scrubland. The truck bounced over rough terrain, pushing through brush and dirt. He drove perpendicular to the highway, determined to break the loop by leaving the road entirely. He drove for what felt like 5 minutes, the truck lurching and struggling over the uneven ground. Then his headlights caught pavement. Highway 283 stretched ahead of him. Mile marker 47 stood to his right. He'd driven in a straight line away from the highway, and somehow ended up back on it. Marcus stopped the truck and sat in silence. The truth settled over him like a heavy blanket. There was no escape. The mile marker, the highway, the loop. It was infinite, closed, perfect. He could drive forever and never leave this single mile of Kansas highway. His phone showed 3:47 a.m. It would always show 3:47 a.m. His fuel gauge read 3/4 full. It would always read 3/4 full. And mile marker 47 would keep appearing in his headlights, over and over, forever. Marcus Chen put his hands back on the steering wheel and began to drive. What else could he do? He was a trucker. Truckers drive. That's what they do. That's all they can do. He passes mile marker 47 for the 237th time now, or maybe the 2373rd. He's lost count. His GPS shows him frozen on Highway 283 in Kansas. The clock shows 3:47 a.m. The fuel gauge shows 3/4 full. Sometimes he sees other trucks in his mirrors, other drivers trapped in their own loops. Sometimes he hears voices on the CB radio, other drivers calling out for help, their messages fragmenting into static and repetition. Sometimes he wonders if his delivery is waiting for him somewhere in Colorado, if anyone is looking for him, if the real world still exists beyond this single, impossible mile. But mostly, he just drives, past mile marker 47, again and again and again. Story 2. The passenger who wasn't there. Rachel Morrison had been driving rideshare for 6 years in the greater Phoenix area, working primarily the night shift when surge pricing made the work profitable. On March 3rd, 2021, she accepted a pickup request that would challenge everything she understood about reality. The request came through at 11:47 p.m. Pickup at the corner of Indian School Road and 43rd Avenue. Destination listed as an address in Surprise, Arizona, about 30 miles northwest. The passenger's name showed as David R., with a 4.9 rating. Everything seemed routine. Rachel was about 8 minutes from the pickup location, finishing a bag of pretzels and queuing up her favorite podcast. The pickup corner was a relatively busy intersection, gas station on one corner, closed auto parts store on another. As Rachel pulled up, she saw a man standing under the streetlight, tall, maybe 6'2", wearing jeans and a dark blue button-down shirt. He was looking at his phone. She flashed her lights, and he looked up, checking her license plate against his screen before walking to the car. "David?" Rachel asked as he opened the rear passenger door. "That's me," he confirmed, climbing in. "Thanks for the quick pickup." "No problem. Heading to Surprise, right?" "Yeah. The address is in the app. It's my sister's place." Rachel pulled away from the curb and merged into light traffic. The route would take them up the 101 freeway, then west on the 303. About 40 minutes with current traffic conditions. David was quiet in the back seat, which Rachel appreciated. Some passengers wanted to talk constantly, treating her like a therapist or a friend. Others, like David, just wanted a quiet ride. She took the entrance ramp onto the 101 North, settling into the middle lane. Traffic was moderate, enough cars that she wasn't alone on the road, but not the daytime crush. The Phoenix metro area sprawled below them, a vast carpet of lights extending to the mountains. "Mind if I adjust the air?" David asked from the back seat. "Go ahead," Rachel replied. A moment later, she felt cooler air flowing through the vents. She glanced in her rearview mirror at David, who had settled back against the seat, his face illuminated by his phone's glow. They drove in comfortable silence for about 15 minutes. Rachel exited onto the 303 West, following the app's navigation. This route would take them through some less developed areas, past the northern edges of the suburbs where the desert still dominated. The lights became sparser, the darkness between streetlights longer. "Rachel," David's voice came from the back seat. She glanced in the mirror. "Yeah." "Do you ever get weird passengers, like people who make you uncomfortable?" The question seemed odd, but Rachel had been asked stranger things. "Sometimes. Usually I can tell pretty quickly if someone's going to be a problem. I've had to end rides before." "What do you do when that happens?" "I pull over somewhere public and tell them to get out. The app has safety features built in." David nodded, his face unreadable in the mirror. "That's smart." They fell silent again. Rachel noticed they were entering a particularly dark stretch of highway. The residential areas had thinned out, and they were passing through open desert now. Her headlights carved a tunnel through the darkness, and the yellow dividing lines strobed past hypnotically. Her phone chirped with a new notification. Rachel glanced at it mounted on her dashboard. A message from the rideshare app. "Your passenger, David R., has cancelled the ride. You will not be charged." Rachel's heart jumped. She looked in the rearview mirror. David was still sitting in her back seat, looking at his phone. "Hey," Rachel said, "did you just cancel the ride?" David looked up. "What? No. Why would I cancel?" "We're halfway there." Rachel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I just got a notification that you canceled." "Must be a glitch," David said. "I'm looking at my app right now, and it shows the ride as active." Rachel checked her phone again. The ride definitely showed as cancelled on her end. But David was still in her car, and his app showed it as active. That didn't make sense. The app synced in real time. Both their apps should show the same status. "Can you take a screenshot of your app?" Rachel asked. "Sure," David replied. A moment later, Rachel heard the screenshot sound from his phone. "Want me to send it to you?" "Yeah, through the app's messaging." They waited. No message came through. David tried again. Still nothing. "That's weird," David said. "It's like the message won't send." Rachel felt a prickle of unease crawling up her spine. She glanced in the mirror again, studying David's face. He looked real enough, solid, three-dimensional, casting shadows from the passing streetlights. But the app cancellation bothered her deeply. "Mind if I pull over for a second?" Rachel asked. "I want to restart my app. Sometimes it gets buggy." "No problem," David said. Rachel took the next exit, pulling into a 24-hour gas station parking lot. She turned off her app and restarted it, watching the loading screen. The app opened, showing her active and available for rides. No current passenger, no active trip. The ride with David R. showed in her history as cancelled at 12:04 a.m., the exact time she'd received the notification while driving. But David was still in her back seat. "Everything okay?" David asked. Rachel turned around to look at him directly, not through the mirror. He was there, solid and real, looking at her with mild concern. "My app says you're not in the car," Rachel said carefully. David frowned. That's crazy. I'm obviously here. He held up his phone. And my app shows the ride as active. Look. He leaned forward, holding his phone where Rachel could see the screen. She looked at it. The screen showed a rideshare app interface with an active ride, her name listed as the driver, the route displayed. Everything looked correct. Except Rachel noticed something wrong. The map on David's screen showed them on the 101 freeway, approaching the 303 exit. But they'd already taken that exit 5 minutes ago. They were parked at a gas station. The map on David's phone wasn't current. It was showing their location from earlier in the trip. David, Rachel said slowly, when did you request this ride? About 10 minutes before you picked me up. Why? What time was that? He checked his phone. 11:37 p.m. Rachel looked at her dashboard clock. It read 12:19 a.m. That was about 42 minutes ago, which matched her memory of accepting the ride. But something felt wrong. David, what's today's date? March 3rd, he said immediately, then paused. Wait, no. It's March 4th now, since it's after midnight. And the year? David laughed, but it sounded uncertain. 2021. Are you okay? Rachel didn't answer. Instead, she opened her phone's web browser and searched for David R. Rideshare Phoenix. She didn't expect to find anything, but she had to check. The first result made her blood run cold. It was a news article from the Arizona Republic, dated April 15th, 2019. Rideshare passenger killed in highway accident. The article described an accident on the 303 freeway, near mile marker 32, exactly the stretch they'd been driving through. A rideshare vehicle had been struck by a drunk driver at 11:53 p.m. on March 3rd, 2019. The driver of the rideshare survived with minor injuries. The passenger, David Remington, age 34, was killed instantly. Rachel felt her breath catch. March 3rd, 2019, exactly 2 years before tonight. She turned around slowly. David was still there, but now his expression had changed. He looked confused, scared even. Rachel, why are you looking at me like that? David, what year is it? It's 2021. I already told you. But his voice wavered. What's the last thing you remember before getting in my car? David's face went pale. I was waiting at the corner. I requested a ride to my sister's house. Her name is Amanda. She's expecting me. I'm visiting because... He trailed off, his eyes losing focus. Because... Why am I visiting her? David, I need you to think carefully. What do you do for work? I'm an accountant. I work at... He stopped, his brow furrowing. I work at a firm downtown. The name is... He couldn't finish the sentence. Rachel pulled up the news article and turned her phone so David could see it. David, I need you to read this. He leaned forward, squinting at the screen. She watched his eyes move across the text. His face went from confused to horrified. This says I died. This says I died 2 years ago in a car accident on the 303. He looked up at Rachel. But I'm here. I'm right here. I know, Rachel said quietly. But my app canceled your ride at 12:04 a.m. And I've got a news article that says you died in a rideshare accident. David, I don't think you're supposed to be here. That's insane, David said, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm real. I'm solid. I can touch things. He reached forward and tapped Rachel's headrest. See? Real. Rachel didn't know what to say. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was impossible. Ghosts weren't real. Dead people didn't take rideshare trips. But the evidence was overwhelming. The canceled ride, the news article, the way David's phone showed outdated information, the fact that he couldn't remember basic details about his life. Where were you going? Rachel asked. You said your sister's house in Surprise. Yes. Amanda lives there with her husband, Greg. They have a daughter named Sophie. She's 7 years old. Rachel did another web search. Amanda Remington, Surprise, Arizona. She found a Facebook profile that was public. The most recent post from 2 days ago showed a family photo. Amanda, her husband Greg, and their daughter Sophie. But Sophie wasn't 7 years old in the photo. She looked to be about 9. David, your niece Sophie looks older than 7 now. He stared at the photo on Rachel's phone. That's impossible. I just saw her at Christmas. She was 7. Which Christmas? This past Christmas. He paused. 2018. Rachel let that sit between them. 2018. The accident had happened in March 2019. If David remembered Christmas 2018 as this past Christmas, then his timeline had stopped in early 2019. I think you're stuck, Rachel said softly. I think you've been stuck on March 3rd since the accident. And somehow, tonight, I picked you up. David was shaking now. But I feel real. This feels real. I know, but look at your hands. David held up his hands in the light from the gas station. For a moment, they looked solid. Then, as they both watched, his hands began to fade. Not dramatically, just a subtle transparency, like looking at something through thin gauze. No, David whispered. No, no, no. I think you need to let go, Rachel said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. I think you've been holding on, maybe trying to complete this trip for 2 years. But David, you can't. You died that night. Your sister Amanda knows. She's been living without you for 2 years now. I was going to tell her something, David said, his voice distant. Something important. That's why I was visiting. I had to tell her. He trailed off, his form flickering like a bad television signal. Maybe you already told her, Rachel suggested. Maybe you found a way to tell her before the accident. Or maybe she already knew. But David, you can't stay here. You're not meant to be here anymore. David looked at her with eyes that were becoming translucent. I'm scared. I know, but it'll be okay. Will you tell Amanda? David asked. Tell her I tried to get there. Tell her I kept trying. I'll tell her, Rachel promised, though she had no idea how she'd explain this. David nodded. He was fading faster now, becoming more transparent with each passing second. Through his chest, Rachel could see the back seat upholstery. Thank you for the ride, David said. You're a good driver. 5 stars. Then he was gone. The back seat was empty. Rachel sat in her car in the gas station parking lot, staring at the empty seat where a dead man had been sitting moments before. Her phone showed no active rides. Her app history showed the David R. trip as cancelled at 12:04 a.m., with a note, passenger cancelled. Rachel's hands were trembling. She got out of the car and opened the rear door, checking the seat. It was empty. No residual warmth. No indentation in the cushion. Nothing to indicate anyone had been sitting there. But Rachel knew the truth. She'd picked up a ghost. She'd driven a dead man part way to his sister's house, a trip he'd been trying to complete for 2 years. She got back in the driver's seat and pulled up Amanda Remington's Facebook profile. There was a phone number listed. Rachel hesitated, then sent a message. I know this will sound crazy, but I just had an experience involving your brother David. I think he wanted me to tell you that he kept trying to get to you. He kept trying. She didn't expect a response. She put her phone away and sat in the silence of her car, trying to process what had happened. After several minutes, Her phone chirped. A message from Amanda. "Thank you. You're not the first driver to tell me this. He visits on March 3rd every year. He never makes it all the way. But thank you for getting him closer. It means everything." Rachel read the message 3 times. She wasn't the first. Other drivers had picked up David's ghost on the anniversary of his death, had driven him partway to Surprise, had watched him fade away. He was trapped in a loop, trying eternally to complete a trip that death had interrupted. Rachel drove home in silence, her app turned off. She didn't take any more rides that night. When she finally crawled into bed at 2:30 a.m., she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about David's transparent hands and his scared voice asking if everything would be okay. She still drives rideshare in Phoenix. She still works nights. But every March 3rd, she stays home. She doesn't want to pick up that request again, doesn't want to see David's face in her rearview mirror, doesn't want to deliver the news that he's dead to a man who feels alive. Sometimes, late at night on other routes, she glances in her rearview mirror and imagines she sees him there. A flicker of a tall man in a dark blue shirt, looking at his phone, forever trying to reach his sister, forever trapped in the moment between life and death. The app shows her passenger rating as 4.98 stars. She wonders if David's 5-star rating somehow counted, if the app registered his ghost's approval. She hopes it did. She hopes he knows she tried to help him, even though she couldn't deliver him to his destination. Some trips, Rachel learned, can never be completed. Some passengers can never reach their destinations. And some drivers carry memories that weigh heavier than any luggage. Story 3. The town that doesn't exist. Jesse Whitmore had been a pharmaceutical sales representative for 8 years, crisscrossing the Southwest, visiting doctors' offices and hospitals with his trunk full of samples and promotional materials. On August 22nd, 2020, he took a wrong turn that led him to a town that shouldn't exist and that he can never find again. The day started normally. Jesse left El Paso at 6:30 a.m., heading for a series of appointments in Albuquerque. The route was straightforward. Interstate 25. North, about 4.5 hours of driving. He'd made this trip at least 24 times, knew every rest stop, every good place to grab coffee. The weather was clear and hot, typical for late August in New Mexico. Around 10:15 a.m., about halfway to Albuquerque, Jesse's GPS lost signal. Not unusual in this part of New Mexico. The mountains played hell with satellite coverage. He'd driven this route enough times that he could navigate without GPS. He was somewhere between Truth or Consequences and Socorro, in that empty stretch where the desert seemed to extend forever in every direction. Jesse noticed his exit coming up, a rest stop where he usually grabbed coffee and used the facilities. But as he approached, he saw construction signs. Rest, stop, closed, detour. Orange barrels channeled traffic off the interstate onto a 2-lane state highway heading east. Jesse followed the detour, slightly annoyed but not concerned. The signs indicated the detour would rejoin I-25 in 12 miles. He checked his phone, still no signal, and settled in for a short scenic route through the desert. The 2-lane road was in decent condition, empty of other traffic. The landscape was classic New Mexico, scrubland, distant mesas, endless sky. He drove for about 15 minutes, watching for signs indicating the detour's return to the interstate. The road wound through low hills, dipping into shallow valleys. Jesse passed a historical marker too quickly to read, then crested a hill and saw something unexpected below. A town. It wasn't marked on any signs he'd seen, but it was clearly there. A small desert town spread across a valley, maybe 50 or 60 buildings clustered around what looked like a main street. Jesse could see a water tower, a church steeple, houses with yards, a few commercial buildings. It looked like 1,000 other small New Mexico towns, the kind that had sprung up along old mining routes or railroad lines and had been slowly dying for decades. As Jesse descended the hill into the valley, he passed a town sign. "Welcome to Delgado. Population 347. The sign was weathered, the paint faded, but readable. Jesse didn't recognize the name, but that didn't mean much. New Mexico had dozens of tiny towns he'd never heard of. The town appeared quiet as Jesse drove down the main street. He saw a gas station, a small grocery store, what looked like a diner, a post office, a few other businesses. Most buildings looked operational but old, that particular southwestern architecture of stucco and brick that had been popular mid-century. Cars were parked along the street. Older models, Jesse noticed, mostly from the 1990s and early 2000s. A few people walked on the sidewalks. Jesse needed coffee, and he still had time before his first appointment. He pulled into the parking lot of the diner, Rosie's Cafe, according to the hand-painted sign. The parking lot had 4 other vehicles, including a faded red pickup truck and a dusty sedan. The diner's interior was exactly what Jesse expected. Vinyl booths, a counter with stools, ceiling fans rotating slowly, the smell of coffee and fried food. 3 elderly men sat at the counter, and a middle-aged couple occupied one of the booths. A waitress who looked to be in her 50s stood behind the counter, pouring coffee. She looked up as Jesse entered. "Morning, hun," she said. "Sit anywhere you like." Jesse took a booth near the window where he could see his car. The waitress brought him a menu and a cup of coffee without asking. "Just passing through?" she asked. "Yeah, I'm following the detour, heading to Albuquerque." "Detour?" she frowned. "Don't know anything about a detour, but we don't get much news here. What can I get you?" Jesse ordered eggs and toast, then pulled out his phone. Still no signal. He studied the diner's interior while he waited for his food. Everything seemed normal, slightly dated, but normal. The calendar behind the counter showed August 2020, the correct month and year. A small television in the corner was turned off. The other customers talked quietly among themselves. His food arrived quickly, and Jesse ate while looking out the window at the town. Something about Delgado bothered him, though he couldn't pinpoint what. Maybe it was just the quiet, an uncanny stillness that small towns sometimes had. Or maybe it was the lack of modern touches. No smartphones visible among the customers. No contemporary advertising on the walls. Even the waitress moved with a kind of unhurried slowness that seemed to belong to an earlier era. Jesse finished his meal and paid in cash. The diner didn't have a credit card machine, the waitress explained apologetically. As he left, he noticed a bulletin board by the door covered in community announcements. Church socials, a school play, someone selling a truck. All the notices were dated from 2003 and 2004. That struck Jesse as odd. He paused, studying the board more carefully. Every single dated item was from 2003 or early 2004. Nothing more recent. He turned back to the waitress. "Excuse me, ma'am. Your bulletin board. It's got some pretty old notices on it." She glanced at the board and shrugged. "Guess nobody's cleaned it off in a while. We're not real ambitious about that sort of thing." "It's all from 2003 and 2004, Jesse said. The waitress's smile didn't change, but something in her eyes did. "Is it? Well, time flies." Jesse left the diner feeling distinctly uneasy. He got into his car and looked at his phone again. No signal. he decided to drive through town and get back to the main detour route. He needed to get to Albuquerque. As he drove slowly down the main street, Jesse paid closer attention to everything. The gas station's price sign showed prices from the early 2000s, $1.76 per gallon. The movie theater marquee, he hadn't noticed it before, advertised films from 2003. Finding Nemo and Pirates of the Caribbean. The few people he saw on the sidewalks wore clothing styles that seemed dated, though Jesse wasn't expert enough to be certain. Jesse felt his chest tightening. This wasn't right. This was deeply, fundamentally wrong. He accelerated, heading for the far end of town. The road should continue, should rejoin the detour route, should lead him back to I-25 and sanity. But as he reached the edge of Delgado, the paved road ended. Just ended. It transitioned abruptly to dirt track that disappeared into the desert scrubland. Jesse stopped the car. He could see nothing ahead but empty desert. No road, no signs. No indication that anyone had driven this way in years. He turned around, his hands slippery with sweat on the steering wheel. He'd drive back through town, retrace his route, find the road he'd come in on. Simple. He'd just gotten disoriented. But as Jesse drove back through Delgado, the town looked different. The buildings seemed slightly off, like someone had rearranged them. The diner where he'd eaten was gone. In its place was a building with boarded windows. The gas station had vanished, replaced by an empty lot. The people who'd been on the sidewalks had disappeared. Panic rising in his throat, Jesse drove to where he'd entered the town. The road was there, climbing up the hill out of the valley. Relief flooded through him. He accelerated up the hill, his car engine straining. At the top of the hill, Jesse looked back. The valley was empty. No town, no buildings, no water tower or church steeple. Just empty desert stretching to the horizon. Jesse sat in his stopped car, breathing hard, staring at the empty valley. Delgado was gone. It had been there. He'd driven through it, eaten at the diner, paid cash, talked to the waitress. But now it was gone as if it had never existed. He looked at his phone. Still no signal. The time showed 10:47 a.m. He'd left the interstate around 10:20 a.m., spent maybe 30 minutes total in the town. The timing made sense, except for the town that had vanished. Jesse drove. The detour road continued ahead, winding through the hills. He followed it in a daze, his mind unable to process what had happened. After about 20 minutes, he saw interstate signs ahead. The detour rejoined I-25 as promised. The moment Jesse's car merged back onto the interstate, his phone chirped with a dozen notifications. Signal restored. Email, texts, news alerts all flooding in. The GPS recalculated his route to Albuquerque. Everything returned to normal. Jesse pulled into the first rest stop and sat in the parking lot for 15 minutes, trying to steady his breathing. He pulled up Google Maps on his phone and searched for Delgado, New Mexico. No results. He tried Delgado Town, New Mexico. Nothing. He searched for Rosie's Cafe, New Mexico, towns near Socorro, ghost towns between T or C and Socorro. Nothing matched what he'd experienced. He called his wife. "Sarah, I need you to do something for me. Search for a town called Delgado in New Mexico. Delgado. Sarah searched while Jesse waited. "Nothing," she reported. "There's no town with that name in New Mexico." "Are you sure that's the name?" "I saw the sign," Jesse said. "I was there. I ate at a diner." "Jesse, are you feeling okay? Maybe you need to stop for the day." "I'm fine," Jesse lied. "I'll call you later." Jesse made his appointments in Albuquerque on autopilot. his mind replaying every detail of Delgado. The diner, the waitress, the bulletin board with dates from 2003, the gas prices from 20 years ago, the movies from 2003, the complete absence of modern technology, and then the town's complete disappearance when he looked back from the hill. On his return trip to El Paso 2 days later, Jesse deliberately took the same route. He watched carefully for the rest stop, the construction signs, the detour. Everything was normal. No construction, no detour, no road leading east into the hills. The rest stop was open and operational. Jesse pulled over anyway and studied the landscape. He thought he recognized the hill where he'd first seen Delgado, in the valley below. But he couldn't be certain. All the hills looked similar. He couldn't see any valley containing a town. He hiked up one of the hills, sweating in the August heat, to get a better view. From the top, he could see for miles in every direction. Empty desert, no town, no buildings, nothing to indicate human habitation beyond the distant interstate. Jesse took photographs. He documented everything. He posted on internet forums about New Mexico ghost towns and unexplained phenomena. Most responses suggested he'd hallucinated due to dehydration or had experienced highway hypnosis. Some suggested Delgado was a real ghost town he'd misremembered the location of. A few people claimed similar experiences, driving through towns that didn't exist, places that vanished when they tried to return. One response stuck with Jesse. A user named Desert Watcher wrote, "Time pockets. Some places in the southwest where time doesn't flow normally. You might have driven into a pocket of 2003 and then out again. The town exists, just not in 2020. Or it existed once, and you drove through a memory of it. The desert remembers things." Jesse doesn't know if he believes that. He's not sure what he believes, but he knows what he experienced. He ate eggs and toast in a diner in a town called Delgado, population 3.7, where people lived in 2003 and seemed unaware that 17 years had passed. He paid $5.50 for breakfast and left a $3 tip. He has the receipt. He found it in his pocket later, dated August 22, 2003. The paper receipt is old, faded, the ink barely legible. Rosie's Cafe, Delgado NM, printed at the top. When Jesse showed it to his wife, she said it looked like it had been in his pocket for 17 years, not 2 days. Jesse still makes the drive between El Paso and Albuquerque. He still takes I-25. He watches the hills east of the interstate, looking for a valley that might contain a town. He's never seen it again. But sometimes, when he crests certain hills, he feels a prickling sensation on the back of his neck, a feeling that if he just turned his head at the right angle, he'd see the buildings of Delgado spread out below him, frozen in August 2003, waiting for travelers who take the wrong detour. He wonders about the people he saw there. The waitress, the elderly men at the counter. Were they real people, trapped in a time loop? Were they ghosts? Echoes of a past that the desert had somehow preserved? Or was Jesse the ghost to them? A strange man from the future, passing briefly through their 2003 before vanishing back to his own time. Jesse doesn't have answers. He only has questions. A faded receipt from a diner that doesn't exist, and the certain knowledge that reality is far less solid than he'd always believed. Somewhere in the desert hills of New Mexico, there's a town where time stopped, where life continues in an endless August 2003, where a diner serves eggs and toast to travelers who stumble into a pocket of the past. And Jesse knows, with absolute certainty, that if he ever finds Delgado again, he won't leave. The town will keep him, the way it's kept everyone else, frozen in time, forever eating breakfast on a warm August morning that never ends. Story 4. The Trucker's Voice. Kevin Santos had been driving trucks for 17 years, hauling everything from electronics to furniture across the western states. He prided himself on his professionalism, maintained his rig meticulously, kept his logbooks accurate, never missed a delivery window. On November 9th, 2018, while driving a load of furniture from Seattle to Las Vegas, Kevin heard a voice on his CB radio that would haunt him for the rest of his life. A voice that was his own. The run was straightforward. Kevin had picked up the load in Seattle on November 7th and was making good time down Interstate 5 through California, planning to cut east on the 58 through Bakersfield, then down the 15 into Las Vegas. The weather was clear and cold, typical for early November in the Central Valley. On the evening of November 9th, Kevin was driving through the agricultural flatlands between Fresno and Bakersfield. The sun had set about an hour earlier, and the highway stretched ahead under a sky full of stars. Traffic was light, a few other trucks, occasional passenger cars, nothing unusual. Kevin had his CB radio on Channel 19, the standard trucker channel, listening to the occasional chatter. Someone complaining about construction near Bakersfield. Someone else recommending a truck stop with good coffee. At 7:34 p.m., according to Kevin's dashboard clock, a voice came through the CB that made him nearly swerve off the road. "This is Polar Express heading south on the 5 near Kettleman City. I need help. Something's wrong with my truck. Can anyone hear me?" The voice was Kevin's own. Same cadence, same slight accent from growing up in the Central Valley, same everything. It was like listening to a recording of himself, except Kevin hadn't spoken. His handset was sitting in its cradle. He hadn't touched it. Kevin grabbed the handset, his heart pounding. "This is Polar Express. Who the hell is this? You're not me." Static answered him. Then, "If anyone can hear me, I'm in trouble. My truck is responding weird. The steering's fighting me. I think something's wrong with..." The transmission cut off. Kevin sat in stunned silence, his hands tight on the wheel. Polar Express was his CB handle. He'd been using it for years. Someone was impersonating him on the radio, using his voice somehow. But how? Voice modification software, a recording. Why? He tried the CB again. "This is the real Polar Express. Whoever's using my handle, identify yourself." No response. Kevin drove in silence for several minutes, his mind racing. It had to be a prank. Someone with a voice similar to his, screwing around on the CB. Truckers played jokes on each other sometimes. But the voice had been exact. Not just similar, but identical. Kevin had heard recordings of his own voice enough times to recognize it perfectly. About 15 minutes later, the voice came through again. "This is Polar Express. I need help. My truck just did something impossible. The steering wheel turned on its own. I'm trying to pull over, but the brakes aren't responding right." Kevin grabbed the handset immediately. "Stop using my handle. I'm Polar Express. Identify yourself. Heading into Kettleman City now. If anyone's nearby, please respond. Something is really wrong." "I am Polar Express," Kevin shouted into the radio. "Stop impersonating me." Static. Then a different voice, older, gravelly. "Polar Express, this is Nighthawk. I'm hearing two of you on this channel. What's going on?" "Someone's using my handle and my voice," Kevin said. "I don't know who or why." "Your voice?" Nighthawk said. "Son, you sound different now than you did 30 seconds ago." Kevin felt cold fear wash through him. "What do you mean?" "The first transmission, you sounded scared, talking about truck problems. Now you sound angry, and your voice is different, higher pitched." That wasn't me the first time, Kevin insisted. I didn't transmit until just now. A pause. Then Nighthawk. Okay, this is weird. Both voices claim to be Polar Express. Are you guys twins or something? I don't have a twin, Kevin said. Someone's pranking us. But even as he said it, Kevin didn't believe it. The voice had been too perfect, too exactly his own. And it had been scared, genuinely terrified in a way that was hard to fake. Kevin was approaching Kettleman City, a small town that existed primarily as a rest stop for travelers on Interstate 5. He could see the lights ahead, the truck stops, and fast food restaurants clustered around the exit. His own truck was running perfectly. Engine temperature normal, transmission smooth, steering responsive. Nothing wrong. The radio crackled again. This is Polar Express. I'm pulling into the truck stop at Kettleman City. Something's very wrong. My truck it's making impossible movements. The cab is tilting when it shouldn't. If anyone's here, please find me. I'm driving a Freightliner Cascadia. Blue cab. Trailer says Morrison Furniture. Please. Kevin looked at his own truck reflected in his side mirror. Freightliner Cascadia. Blue cab. Trailer that said Morrison Furniture. He was driving the exact truck the voice had described. No, Kevin whispered. No, no, no. He took the Kettleman City exit, his mind racing. He would pull into the truck stop and figure this out. He would find whoever was pranking him and... This is Nighthawk. Polar Express. I'm at the Kettleman City truck stop right now. Which one of you is here? I'm coming in now, Kevin said into the handset. I'm already here, the other voice, Kevin's voice, said simultaneously. Parked on the north side. Kevin pulled into the truck stop parking area, his headlights sweeping across rows of parked trucks. He drove slowly through the lot, looking for another Freightliner Cascadia with a blue cab and Morrison Furniture trailer. There were maybe 40 trucks parked here, some with lights on, others dark and silent. He didn't see a truck matching his description. Nighthawk, this is Polar Express. I'm here. Where are you? By the diesel pumps. Where are you? Kevin drove to the diesel pump area. He saw an older Peterbilt with Nighthawk painted on the door. A heavy-set man in his 60s stood beside it, looking around with a puzzled expression. Kevin pulled up beside him and rolled down his window. I'm Polar Express, Kevin said. Nighthawk looked at him, then at Kevin's truck. Yeah, you said you were driving a blue Cascadia with Morrison Furniture. That matches. Did you see another truck like this? No, but the other Polar Express said he was parked on the north side. Kevin and Nighthawk drove together through the parking lot in Kevin's truck, searching. They checked every row, every parked vehicle. No other blue Freightliner Cascadia. No other Morrison Furniture trailer. He said he was here, Kevin insisted. He said he was parked. Maybe he left, Nighthawk suggested. Kevin grabbed his CB handset. Polar Express, the other one. Are you still at Kettleman City? Static for a long moment. Then, yes, I'm here. Parked on the north side, like I said. Where are you guys? Can you see my running lights? There's no truck here, Kevin said. We're looking right at the north side parking. You're not here. I'm looking at your headlights right now, the voice responded. You're driving past me. Blue Cascadia. That's you, right? Kevin and Nighthawk were parked, not moving. Kevin's headlights illuminated empty parking spaces. We're not moving, Kevin said carefully. Our lights aren't moving. A long pause, then, yes, you are. You just drove past me. I'm flashing my lights. Can you see? Kevin and Nighthawk sat in silence, staring at the empty parking lot. No lights flashed. No trucks moved. Son, Nighthawk said quietly, I think you're talking to something that isn't really here. Or isn't here in the same way we are. Kevin felt his throat tighten. What does that mean? I don't know. But I've been driving for 38 years, and I've heard stories. Truckers who radio for help but can't be found. Phantom trucks on the CB. Some people think it's truckers who died on the road, still trying to call for help. Others think it's alternate timelines or dimensions or some shit. I don't know what to believe. But that other voice, it sounds like you. It's using your handle. It's describing your exact truck. But it's not here. Not in our reality. Kevin tried the radio again. Who are you? Are you me from somewhere else? I'm Kevin Santos, the voice responded immediately. I'm a truck driver hauling furniture from Seattle to Las Vegas. I don't understand what's happening. My truck is doing impossible things. The laws of physics aren't working right. I pulled into this truck stop for help, but no one can see me. People keep driving past me like I'm not here. Are you all ghosts? Am I dead? Kevin's blood ran cold. You're Kevin Santos? Yes. Who are you? I'm Kevin Santos, too. Silence on the radio. Then, that's not possible. What's today's date? Kevin asked. November 9th, 2018. What time? About 7:55 p.m. Kevin checked his clock. 7:57 p.m. 2 minutes later than the other Kevin's time. What happened to your truck? Kevin asked. You said it was doing impossible things. The steering wheel turned on its own. The brakes didn't work right. The cab tilted at an angle that shouldn't be possible, like gravity was coming from the side instead of down. And the road wasn't going where it should. I was on Interstate 5, but suddenly I was on a different road, or the same road but different, like someone had copied it wrong. Kevin remembered his own drive. Nothing unusual had happened. His truck had run perfectly, but he'd been on the exact same road, at the exact same time, hauling the exact same load. I think, Kevin said slowly, that something happened to you that didn't happen to me. We split. Different timelines or realities or whatever. In your reality, something went wrong. In mine, everything stayed normal. So, where am I? The other Kevin asked. If you're in the normal reality, where am I? I don't know. Nighthawk had been listening to the exchange with a grim expression. Ask him if he can drive out of there, if he can get back on the highway. Kevin relayed the question. The other Kevin responded, I can try, but I'm scared. What if it happens again? What if the truck does more impossible things? Maybe you need to, Kevin said. Maybe sitting still is what keeps you trapped. Maybe you have to push through it. A long silence. Then, okay, I'm starting my engine. I'm going to try to leave. If I disappear from the radio, maybe that means I made it back. Good luck, Kevin said. And I'm sorry this is happening to you. It's happening to you too, the other Kevin said. You just don't know it yet. The words sent chills down Kevin's spine. What do you mean? I mean that 2 hours ago, I was where you are now. Normal reality. Normal truck. Then something shifted, and suddenly I was in this wrong place where physics doesn't work, and no one can see me. If it happened to me, it can happen to you. Maybe it's already starting to happen, and you just haven't noticed yet. Kevin looked at Nighthawk, who shrugged uncomfortably. Just drive, Kevin said into the radio. Get back on the highway and keep going. Maybe you'll slip back into the normal timeline. Okay, I'm moving now. Leaving the parking lot, heading for the on-ramp. The truck feels wrong, but I'm going to push through it. If you don't hear from me again, I hope that means I made it. And Kevin, me, us, be careful. Pay attention to everything. If reality starts feeling wrong, even slightly, stop driving. Don't do what I did. Don't push through thinking it'll pass. It won't pass. I will, Kevin promised. Goodbye, the other Kevin said. Or good luck. Or whatever you say to another version of yourself who's trapped in a nightmare reality. The radio went silent. Kevin and Nighthawk sat in the truck for another 20 minutes, waiting, listening to Channel 19. The other Kevin didn't transmit again. Other truckers chatted about traffic and weather and where to find good food. Everything normal. Think he made it? Kevin asked. Don't know, Nighthawk said. Maybe. Or maybe he's still out there, in whatever wrong version of reality he slipped into. And we just can't hear him anymore. Kevin drove away from Kettleman City 15 minutes later, after Nighthawk had gone back to his own truck. Kevin continued south on Interstate 5, hyper-aware of every sensation, every slight variation in how his truck handled. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, ready to notice any hint of it turning on its own. He watched his gauges obsessively. He paid attention to the angle of the cab, making sure gravity was coming from the correct direction. Everything remained normal. The truck drove perfectly. The highway went where it was supposed to go. Kevin arrived in Las Vegas at 2:30 a.m. on November 10th and delivered his load without incident. But he never forgot the voice on the CB. His own voice, scared and trapped, calling for help from a reality that had gone wrong. He never forgot the other Kevin's warning. It's happening to you too. You just don't know it yet. Kevin still drives trucks. He still uses the handle Polar Express. But now, every time he keys his CB radio, he listens carefully to his own voice, wondering if it sounds right, if it sounds real, if he's still in the correct version of reality, or if he's started to slip into that wrong place where physics fails and no one can see him. Sometimes, late at night on empty highways, he hears another trucker using the Polar Express handle, speaking with his voice, calling for help that never comes. Kevin tries to respond, tries to offer guidance or comfort, but the transmissions never connect. The other Kevins, there might be dozens of them by now, hundreds, each one trapped in their own fractured reality, are beyond reach, beyond help. Kevin wonders how many versions of himself are out there, driving phantom trucks through impossible geometries, slowly realizing that they've left the real world behind and entered something else, some space between spaces where the rules don't apply and escape isn't possible. He wonders if, someday, he'll be one of them, if he'll key his radio and call for help, and some other Kevin Santos, the lucky one who stayed in the real world, will hear his voice and be unable to help. The CB radio crackles with static and distant voices. Kevin drives through the night, and somewhere, in realities adjacent to ours, other Kevin Santoses drive too, forever calling out on Channel 19, forever hoping someone will answer, forever trapped in the moment when their world went wrong. Story 5. The Midnight Delivery. Patricia Wu had been delivering pizzas for Marco's Pizza in suburban Portland for 3 years while attending community college. On Friday, January 17, 2020, she received a delivery order that would force her to question the nature of reality itself. The order came through at 11:47 p.m., near the end of Patricia's shift. She was hoping to finish by midnight, get home, and sleep before her Saturday morning classes. The order was large, 4 pizzas, breadsticks, and drinks, to an address on Ridgeline Drive in the hills west of Portland. Patricia knew the area vaguely. Expensive homes on winding roads with spectacular views of the city. Patricia loaded the pizzas into her insulated delivery bag, checked the address on her phone's GPS, and headed out. The total with tip came to $87.50, already paid through the app. Standard delivery. She'd be there and back in 30 minutes. The drive took her out of the commercial strip where Marco's was located, through residential neighborhoods, then onto increasingly narrow roads climbing into the hills. The houses grew larger and more spread out. Portland's lights sparkled below, a carpet of illumination against the darkness. Patricia's GPS guided her turn by turn, the route winding through forested areas between properties. In 500 feet, turn right onto Ridgeline Drive, the GPS announced. Patricia made the turn. Ridgeline Drive was a narrow, two-lane road with no streetlights, houses set far back from the pavement. Thick trees lined both sides. Patricia drove slowly, watching for address numbers. Her GPS showed her getting closer to the destination. 14.53 Ridgeline Drive. Arriving at destination on right, the GPS announced. Patricia pulled to the side of the road and looked right. Through the trees, she could see a house, a large modern structure with lots of glass and angular architecture, lights on inside. A driveway led up to it from the road, about 50 yards long. Patricia could see a mailbox at the end of the driveway, with 4273 painted on it. She grabbed the pizza bags and walked up the driveway. The night was cold and quiet, her breath visible in the air. She could hear faint music from inside the house. As she approached the front door, she saw through the large windows that people were inside. A party of some kind, maybe 15 or 20 people, talking and laughing, drinks in hand. Patricia rang the doorbell. The music was clearer now, something jazzy, sophisticated. Through the window beside the door, she could see the party. Men in suits, women in dresses, very upscale. Patricia felt self-conscious in her Marco's Pizza uniform. A man opened the door, 40s, tall, wearing an expensive-looking suit. He smiled at Patricia. "Ah, the food. Excellent timing. Everyone's starving." 4 large pizzas, breadsticks, and drinks, Patricia confirmed. Comes to $87.50, already paid. Perfect. The man took the bags from her. "Hold on, let me get you a cash tip. The app tip is never enough." He disappeared inside, leaving the door open. Patricia caught glimpses of the party. Beautiful people in beautiful clothes, drinking wine, the house impeccably decorated. She felt even more out of place. The man returned and handed Patricia 2 $20 bills. "Thank you for delivering so late. I know it's almost midnight." "No problem, sir. Thank you for the tip. Have a great night." Patricia walked back down the driveway to her car, pocketed the $40, and checked her phone. 11:58 p.m. She'd make it back to the store by 12:15, clock out, and head home. Good night overall. She pulled away from 403 Ridgeline Drive and followed her GPS back down the hill toward Marco's. The route was the same in reverse. Winding roads through trees, larger houses transitioning to smaller ones, then commercial areas. Patricia arrived at the store at 12:12 a.m. Her manager, Dave, was closing up. "Last delivery go okay?" he asked. "Yeah, fine. Big house up on Ridgeline Drive. Fancy party. Guy tipped me $40 cash." "Nice. Good end to the night." Patricia clocked out, got in her personal car, and drove home. She didn't think about the delivery again until Saturday afternoon, when she was studying and her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello. Hi, is this Patricia Wu?" A woman's voice, professional, formal. "Yes. Who's this?" "This is Detective Sarah Mendez with Portland Police. I need to ask you some questions about a delivery you made last night." Patricia felt a jolt of concern. "Is something wrong?" "Where did you deliver pizzas last night?" "Lots of places. I worked until midnight." "Specifically, did you deliver to an address on Ridgeline Drive?" "Yes, 4273 Ridgeline Drive. Big modern house. There was a party. Silence on the line. Then, "Ms. Wu, can you come down to the station? I need to talk to you in person." "Am I in trouble?" "No, you're not in trouble. But I need you to come in. It's important." An hour later, Patricia sat in an interview room at Portland Police Headquarters, facing Detective Mendez, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a serious expression. "Tell me about the delivery to 423 Ridgeline Drive," Mendez said. "Everything you remember." Patricia recounted the story. The late order, the drive up into the hills, the big modern house with the party, the man in the suit who gave her a $40 tip. Mendez took notes. "What time was this?" "I got there about 11:55 p.m., left around 11:58. "And you're certain of the address?" "Yes. I checked my GPS and the mailbox. 4273 Ridgeline Drive." Mendez pulled out a photo and slid it across the table. "Is this the house?" Patricia looked at the photo. It showed a modern house with lots of glass and angular architecture. The same house she'd delivered to. "Yes, that's it." Mendez pulled out another photo. "Is this the man who answered the door?" Patricia looked at a professional headshot of the man who'd given her the tip. "Yes, that's him." Mendez leaned back in her chair. "Ms. Wu, that house burned down 8 years ago, in January 2012. The man in the photo, James Kellerman, died in that fire along with his wife and 19 guests. They were having a dinner party. A gas line exploded. Everyone inside was killed." Patricia stared at the detective. "That's impossible." "I was there last night. The house was fine. There were people at a party. I talked to that man." Mendez pulled out more photos. Crime scene photos showing a burned structure, blackened timber and melted glass. Emergency vehicles with lights flashing. "This is what 423 Ridgeline Drive looks like now. The foundation is still there, but the house is gone. It's been gone for 8 years. Patricia felt the room spinning. "I delivered pizzas there. I got a $40 cash tip." She pulled out her wallet, showing Mendez 2 $20 bills. "This is the money he gave me." Mendez examined the bills. "These are real, but that doesn't prove anything about where you got them." "Check the Marco's Pizza records," Patricia said. "Check the delivery app. There was an order to that address." Mendez had already checked. She showed Patricia her tablet. There was an order, placed at 11:47 p.m., for delivery to 42C73 Ridgeline Drive. 4 pizzas, breadsticks, drinks. Paid through the app, $87.50. The ordering account belongs to James Kellerman, the same account he used regularly before his death 8 years ago. The account has been inactive since January 2012. Until last night. Patricia couldn't breathe. "How is that possible?" "I don't know, but you're the 3rd person this month who's reported contact with that house. 2 weeks ago, a postal worker said he delivered a package there. Before that, a woman said she attended a party there. Both described the house as intact, fully occupied. Both described people who died in the 2012 fire." "What does that mean?" Patricia whispered. "I don't know what it means," Mendez admitted. "Officially, it means nothing. There's no crime here, no fraud, no one's been hurt. But off the record, I think that house is still there somehow. Not in our physical reality, but in some other version of it. And occasionally, people slip into that version, deliver pizzas to it, attend parties there, before slipping back to our reality, where the house burned down years ago." Patricia drove back to her apartment in a daze. That evening, unable to stop herself, she drove back to Ridgeline Drive. In daylight, she could see clearly. 473. Ridgeline Drive was a blackened ruin, overgrown with vegetation. The foundation was still visible, and parts of the structure remained, but it was obviously the site of a catastrophic fire. No roof, no glass, no people, just destruction. Patricia parked and walked up the driveway, the same driveway she'd walked the night before. She could see where the front door had been. She stood in that spot, remembering the man in the suit, his smile, the $40 tip. She pulled out her phone and took photos of the ruins. Then she checked her camera roll from the previous night. She'd taken a photo of the address numbers on the mailbox when she'd arrived, just to confirm she had the right place. She did that sometimes for tricky-to-find addresses. The photo showed the mailbox, 423, clearly visible. But behind the mailbox, instead of the intact modern house, the photo showed the ruins, the burned structure, the destruction. But Patricia knew, she remembered with absolute certainty, that the house had been intact when she'd taken that photo. Reality had changed, or she had moved between realities, or time had folded in on itself, allowing her to deliver pizzas to people who'd been dead for 8 years. Patricia drove home and didn't tell anyone about what she'd discovered. She kept working at Marco's Pizza, but she requested that the manager never assign her deliveries on Ridgeline Drive. She didn't trust herself to refuse if the order came through again. Part of her, a small, scared part, wanted to go back. Wanted to see the intact house again, to confirm she hadn't imagined it. Wanted to knock on that door and ask James Kellerman if he knew he was dead. 3 weeks later, another order came through to 4273 Ridgeline Drive. Patricia was working, but another driver, a new kid named Travis, took the delivery. He came back 40 minutes later, pale and shaking. "That address doesn't exist," Travis said. "I drove up there, and there's just a burned-out foundation. I tried calling the customer, but the number doesn't work. I had to bring the pizzas back." Patricia didn't say anything. She knew that Travis had experienced the normal reality, the one where the house burned down 8 years ago. But she also knew that sometimes, on certain nights, under certain conditions she didn't understand, the house was there again, full of people who died in 2012, people who could order pizzas and tip delivery drivers and have no idea they were ghosts hosting a party in a house that existed in a bubble of preserved time. Patricia quit Marco's Pizza a month later. She couldn't handle the uncertainty, never knowing if a delivery would be normal or if she'd slip again into that other reality. She transferred to a different community college in a different part of Portland, away from the hills, away from Ridgeline Drive. But she still has the $40, two $20 bills in her wallet, kept separate from her other cash. She doesn't spend them. They're evidence, proof that she's not crazy, that something impossible happened. The bills are real. The house was real. The people were real. And somewhere, in a version of January 17th that never ended, James Kellerman is still having his dinner party, still ordering pizzas, still tipping generous delivery drivers who stumble through a crack in reality into his preserved moment of time. The party never ends. The guests never leave. The house never burns. Patricia wonders how many other people have delivered food there, attended the party, spoken with the dead. She wonders if, someday, she'll drive past Ridgeline Drive and see the house standing intact again, lights blazing, music playing, ghosts laughing inside. She wonders if she'll stop, if she'll walk up that driveway again, if she'll knock on the door and ask the man in the suit why he's still there, why he and his guests remain frozen in the last minutes, before the gas line exploded and killed them all. But mostly, she wonders which reality is real. The one where the house burned down, or the one where it still stands, where a party never ends, where the dead order pizzas at 11:47 p.m. and tip $40 in cash to terrified delivery drivers who realize too late that they've carried food across the border between life and death. Patricia doesn't have answers. She only has questions, 2 $20 bills, and the certain knowledge that reality has cracks, thin places where the past and present overlap, where the dead continue their lives unaware that they've ended, where a house can burn down and still stand, existing in 2 states simultaneously, waiting for the next person to slip through the crack and discover that the past is not as finished as we believe. The pizzas were probably cold by the time they were served. Patricia thinks about that sometimes. She delivered hot pizzas to dead people at a party in a burned house, in a moment of time that ended 8 years ago. She hopes they enjoyed them. She hopes, somehow, that her delivery made their eternal party slightly better. But she never drives on Ridgeline Drive anymore. Some deliveries, she learned, shouldn't be made. Some addresses exist in places you shouldn't visit. And some tips are payment for crossing a boundary that was never meant to be crossed. Story 6. The Service Station. Martin Kelsey had been a pharmaceutical sales representative for GlaxoSmithKline for 9 years, driving regularly between St. Louis and Indianapolis to visit doctors' offices and hospitals. On April 4th, 2019, he stopped for gas at a service station that existed outside the normal flow of time, a place he would search for unsuccessfully for the rest of his life. Martin left St. Louis at 2:45 p.m., planning to drive straight through to Indianapolis for a morning meeting. The weather was overcast but dry, temperature in the low 60s. He took Interstate 70 East, a route he'd driven at least once a month for years. The highway was familiar. Rest stops, mile markers, small towns along the way. Martin knew where the good coffee was, which exits had clean bathrooms, where state troopers liked to hide. Around 6:30 p.m., as the sun was setting, Martin noticed his fuel gauge approaching empty. He'd planned to fill up in Terre Haute, but he'd gotten distracted on a conference call and missed his usual exit. Now he was in rural Indiana, farms and fields, stretching in all directions, and his tank was running low. Martin watched for gas station signs. This stretch of I-70 had services, but they were spread out. He calculated he had maybe 20 miles left before his tank was empty. He drove with increasing anxiety, watching the gauge needle sink lower. Then he saw it. A blue service station sign indicating gas, food, and lodging at the next exit. Relief flooded through Martin. He took the exit, following signs to Ray's Service Station, 1 mile. The road led away from the interstate through farmland, straight and narrow. Martin saw no houses, no other businesses, just fields on both sides. After about a mile, the service station appeared. A small, old-fashioned place, with 2 pumps under a faded canopy, a garage bay, and an attached convenience store. The style was vintage, maybe 1960s. Rounded architecture, lots of chrome, hand-painted signs. The kind of place you'd see in old photos or nostalgic movies. Martin pulled up to one of the pumps, relieved. The station looked operational, lights on in the store, an open sign in the window. He noticed one other vehicle, an older sedan parked near the garage. The price display on the pump showed $1.89 per gallon, which seemed remarkably cheap, but Martin didn't question it. He was just glad to have found gas. He swiped his credit card at the pump. The card reader was old-fashioned, not like the modern touchscreens at newer stations, but it accepted his card. Martin selected regular unleaded and began pumping. While the gas flowed, Martin looked around. The service station sat in absolute isolation. No other buildings visible in any direction, just fields and distant tree lines. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple. It was beautiful, but oddly lonely. The pump clicked off at $42.30. Martin replaced the nozzle and checked his receipt. Everything looked normal. He decided to use the bathroom and maybe grab coffee for the rest of the drive. Inside, the convenience store was a perfect time capsule. The shelves held products Martin recognized, but in packaging from decades ago. Glass bottles of Coca-Cola, candy bars in vintage wrappers, cigarettes behind the counter in old-fashioned displays. The floor was checkerboard linoleum, the walls covered in faded advertising posters. A radio on the counter played music, big band jazz, the kind Martin's grandfather used to listen to. Behind the counter stood an elderly man, maybe 80 years old, wearing mechanic's coveralls and a friendly smile. "Help you with anything else?" he asked. "Just need to use the restroom," Martin said. "And maybe get coffee if you have it." "Restroom's in the back. Coffee's fresh. Made it an hour ago." Martin used the bathroom, which was surprisingly clean despite the building's age, then poured himself a large coffee from the pot on the counter. He grabbed a candy bar, a Milky Way in packaging he'd never seen before, clearly vintage. At the counter, the old man rang up his purchases on a mechanical cash register that made satisfying ding sounds. "That'll be $1.35. Martin paused. "For coffee and a candy bar?" "Yep." "Coffee's 50 cents. Candy bar's 85 cents. Martin paid with cash, accepting change from a $2 bill. As the old man counted out coins, Martin asked, "How long have you run this place?" "Oh, long time, since 1959. 60 years now. You've kept it really authentic. The vintage style, the old products. People must love it." The old man gave him a puzzled look. "Not sure what you mean. This is just how we've always done things." Martin realized the man wasn't playing up a retro theme. He genuinely seemed to exist in an earlier era. Martin looked more carefully at everything. The calendar on the wall showed April 1963. The prices were from decades ago. Even the money the man had given him as change looked old. Coins with dates from the 1950s and 60s. "Sir," Martin said carefully, "what year is it?" The old man laughed. 1963, son. April 4th, 1963. Why, you lose track of time." Martin felt his heartbeat accelerate. "It's 2019. April 4th, 2019. The old man's smile didn't change, but his eyes grew distant. "Is it now? Well, time's funny out here. People come through from all different whens. You're not the first to tell me it's some year in the future. Had a fellow last week said it was 1987. Another one said 2003. Everyone's got their own time, I suppose." "What do you mean?" Martin asked, his voice shaky. "This place sits at a crossroads," the old man explained. "Not just roads, but times. People driving from different years all stop here for gas. To me, it's always 1963. To you, it's 2019. We're both right in our own way." Martin backed toward the door. "This isn't possible. Possible or not, you pumped gas and drank coffee and paid for them. That's real enough, isn't it?" Martin fled to his car. He got in, started the engine, and drove back toward the interstate, his hands shaking on the wheel. The mile-long road back to I-70 seemed longer now, stretching through darkness. When he reached the highway, he merged back onto eastbound lanes and accelerated, putting distance between himself and Ray's service station. His fuel gauge showed full. That was real. He'd pumped gas, but the receipt in his cup holder showed $1.89 per gallon, and the change in his pocket was coins dated from the 1960s. His coffee was real, cooling in the cup holder, and the vintage Milky Way bar sat on his passenger seat. Martin drove directly to his hotel in Indianapolis, arrived around 9:30 p.m., and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes trying to calm down. He'd stopped at a gas station that existed in 1963. He'd paid 1963 prices with his 2019 credit card. He'd talked to a man who claimed people from different time periods all stopped at his station. The next morning, after his meeting, Martin drove back toward St. Louis. He watched carefully for the exit where he'd found Ray's service station. He remembered it clearly. The blue service sign, the exit number. But when he reached that approximate area, there was no exit. He drove 5 miles past where he thought it should be, then turned around and drove back, searching. No exit, no service signs, nothing but continuous interstate. Martin pulled into the next rest stop and used his phone to search maps. He entered Ray's service station, Indiana Interstate 70, into Google Maps. No results. He tried searching for any service stations between mile markers where he thought he'd stopped. The maps showed exits, but none matched what he remembered. Martin called GlaxoSmithKline's travel office. "Can you check credit card records for me? I made a purchase yesterday at a gas station in Indiana, but I can't find it now." They checked. "We show no gas purchases on your card yesterday. The last gas charge was 3 days ago in Illinois." "That's impossible. I pumped gas. I have the receipt." Martin pulled the receipt from his wallet. As he looked at it, he watched the paper yellow and age in his hand. The ink faded. Within 30 seconds, the receipt crumbled to dust and blew away in the breeze through his open window. His candy bar was gone too. The vintage Milky Way had vanished from his car. The coffee cup was empty and dry, as if it had been empty for years. Only the coins remained. 6 quarters, 2 dimes, 5 pennies, all dated between 1952 and 1963. Martin took them to a coin dealer later that week. The dealer confirmed they were genuine, not reproductions. The quarters alone were worth about $150 each in their condition. "Where did you get these?" the dealer asked. "A gas station," Martin said. "In Indiana." He never found the service station again. Martin drove that stretch of I-70 dozens of times over the following months, watching for the exit, the signs, any indication of where he'd turned off. He searched satellite imagery, historical records, asked locals in nearby towns about an old-fashioned gas station called Ray's. Nothing. No one had heard of it. No records existed. Martin researched temporal anomalies, time slips, and places where different eras allegedly overlapped. He found stories from other people who claimed to have stopped at impossible locations. Restaurants that didn't exist, motels from decades past, businesses that had closed years before. Most stories were dismissed as false memories or hoaxes, but Martin had proof. He had coins from 1963, obtained in 2019, at a gas station that existed in both times simultaneously. He had pumped gas there, drunk coffee there, talked to a man who claimed people from different years, all stopped at his crossroads station. Martin became obsessed with finding the station again. He varied his driving times, trying different times of day, different weather conditions. He wondered if the station only appeared under certain circumstances. Low fuel, maybe, or specific dates, or something about the driver's state of mind. On April 4th, 2020, exactly 1 year after his first visit, Martin drove the same route at the same time, his fuel gauge deliberately run low. He watched for the blue service sign, watched for the exit. He drove back and forth across the area for hours. The station didn't appear. On April 4th, 2021, Martin tried again. Same route, same time, fuel gauge low. Nothing. He tried at random times too, middle of the night, early morning, during storms, on clear days. He tried driving with his GPS off, using only his memory and instinct. He tried getting lost deliberately, hoping to stumble onto the crossroads again. The service station never reappeared. Martin still drives between St. Louis and Indianapolis for work, though less frequently now. He's been promoted, takes fewer field trips. But when he does drive I-70, he watches the roadside carefully, hoping to see that blue service sign, that exit that leads to Ray's service station, where time pools and overlaps, where an old man in coveralls sells gas at 1963 prices to travelers from any year. Martin keeps the coins in a display case in his home office. 6 quarters, 2 dimes, 5 pennies, 1.65 in face value, hundreds of dollars in collector value, but priceless to Martin as proof that he didn't imagine it, didn't hallucinate or dream. He stopped at a gas station that existed in 1963 and 2019 simultaneously, a place where the normal rules of time don't apply, where the past is still present and accessible to travelers who stumble onto the right exit at the right moment. He wonders how many other people have stopped there. The old man mentioned travelers from 1987, 2003, other years. Are there people from 2030 stopping there? 2050? Does the station exist across all of time? A fixed point that different eras can access like a hub where temporal roads intersect? Martin wonders if he'll ever find it again. He wonders if he wants to. Part of him yearns to return, to talk more with the old man, to understand what the station really is and how it works. But another part of him is terrified of what it means that such places exist, that time isn't linear and fixed, but fluid and permeable, that the past isn't safely behind us, but still accessible, still present, still real. Late at night, when Martin can't sleep, he imagines the service station sitting in its isolated field, lights on, pumps waiting, the old man behind the counter. He imagines travelers from every era stopping for gas, Model T Fords from the 1920s, muscle cars from the 1970s, flying cars from 2150, all of them pumping gas at 1963 prices, all of them drinking 50-cent coffee, all of them receiving change in coins that will someday be antiques. He imagines the old man, unchanged and unchanging, running his station across decades or centuries, existing in his eternal 1963 while serving customers from all of time. Does the old man know what he is? Does he understand that his service station is a temporal crossroads, a place where the normal rules break down? Martin doesn't have answers. He only has memories, coins, and an endless search for an exit that appears when it chooses, not when it's sought. He drives I-70, watching the roadside, hoping each blue service sign might lead him back to Ray's station, back to that impossible place where he bought coffee for 50 cents and learned that time is far stranger than he'd ever imagined. The coins sit in their display case, catching light, dated 1952 through 1963, obtained in 2019, physical proof that the past isn't past but present, that time loops and folds, that somewhere on a highway in Indiana, there's a place where all years exist at once, and an old man in coveralls sells gas to travelers who don't yet realize they've driven not just through space, but through time itself. Story 7. The Reflection. Diana Volkov had been driving for a catering company in the Denver area for 4 years, delivering food for events ranging from corporate lunches to private parties. On September 13th, 2017, she made a delivery that involved seeing her own death in a car's rearview mirror, and then living past the moment when it should have occurred. The job was straightforward. Deliver hors d'oeuvres, entrees, and desserts to a private residence in the foothills west of Denver for a 7 p.m. dinner party. Diana loaded her catering van at 5:15 p.m. and headed west on Highway 6, following GPS directions to an address on Meadow Ridge Road. The weather was clear and cool, early autumn in Colorado, the mountains dramatic against the evening sky. The route took Diana out of the city, through increasingly upscale neighborhoods, into the foothills where expensive homes sat on large properties with spectacular views. Meadow Ridge Road was a narrow, winding route that climbed steadily, with drop-offs on one side and rock faces on the other. Diana drove carefully. The catering van was full of carefully prepared food, and she'd learned early in her career that sharp turns and sudden stops could destroy presentations. At 6:23 p.m., according to her dashboard clock, Diana glanced in her rearview mirror to check traffic behind her. What she saw made her foot slip off the gas pedal in shock. In the mirror, instead of seeing the road behind her, Diana saw herself. But not a reflection, an image of herself from a different angle, as if a camera was positioned in her back seat filming her. In the mirror, she could see her own face in profile, her hands on the steering wheel, her eyes wide with horror. And she could see something else. Her mirror self was screaming. The van was tilting at an impossible angle, and through the windshield behind her mirror self, Diana could see sky instead of road, as if the van was falling or rolling. Diana blinked, and the mirror returned to normal, showing the empty road behind her. Curves and rock faces, nothing unusual. Diana's hands were shaking. She slowed down, pulling to the shoulder of the road where a small turnout offered space to stop. She put the van in park and sat breathing hard, trying to understand what she'd seen. A hallucination, a trick of light. But it had been so clear, so detailed. Her mirror self had been terrified. The van had been falling, and Diana had seen it all with perfect clarity in her rearview mirror for perhaps 3 seconds before it vanished. She checked the mirror again. Normal. Just the road behind her, empty and quiet in the evening light. Diana considered turning around, canceling the delivery, calling her boss and claiming illness. But she had no rational explanation for what she'd seen, and canceling a major delivery would jeopardize her job. Maybe she'd just been tired, stressed, working too many hours. The mind could play tricks. She pulled back onto Meadow Ridge Road and continued driving toward her delivery address, but more slowly now, hyper-aware of every turn, every drop-off, every potential danger. She tried to avoid looking at the rearview mirror, keeping her eyes on the road ahead. At 6:31 p.m., Diana glanced at the mirror again. The same vision appeared, herself in profile, screaming, the van tilting, sky visible through the windshield. This time, Diana also saw the clock in the mirror vision. It read 6:47 p.m. The vision lasted about 4 seconds, then the mirror returned to normal. Diana pulled over again, her heart racing. The vision had shown a specific time, 6:47 p.m. That was 16 minutes in the future. Diana looked at her current time, 6:31 p.m. She looked at her GPS. She would arrive at the delivery address at approximately 6:52 p.m. if she continued at normal speed. Diana realized with cold certainty what she was seeing. The mirror was showing her the future, specifically showing her an accident that was going to happen at 6:47 p.m. She was going to crash the van, somehow, in exactly 16 minutes. Diana sat on the shoulder of Meadow Ridge Road, trying to think rationally. Could mirrors show the future? No, that was insane. But she'd seen what she'd seen, twice now, both times showing her in extreme danger, both times showing a clock reading 6:47 p.m. She had choices. She could turn around, refuse to deliver, accept whatever consequences came from that decision. Or she could continue, driving carefully, watching for hazards, trying to avoid whatever accident the mirror was predicting. Diana decided to continue, but to stop before 6:47 p.m. She would find a place to pull over safely, park the van, and wait until 6:47 p.m. had passed. If the mirror was showing the future, she could prevent the future by simply not driving at that specific moment. She pulled back onto the road and drove slowly, carefully, watching her clock. At 6:44 p.m., she reached a wide shoulder with a scenic overlook, a small parking area where tourists could stop to photograph the view. Diana pulled in and parked, setting her brake, turning off the engine. She sat in silence, watching the clock. 6:45 p.m., 6:46 p.m. She kept her eyes on the dashboard, refusing to look at the rearview mirror. 6:47 p.m. Diana held her breath. Nothing happened. The van sat motionless in the parking area. No accident, no tilting, no falling. The dangerous moment passed. 6:48 p.m. Diana exhaled, relief flooding through her. She'd avoided the accident. Whatever the mirror had shown her, she'd prevented it by stopping. She waited another minute to be safe, then started the van's engine and pulled back onto the road. She'd driven perhaps 50 feet when a deer bolted from the trees directly into her path. Diana swerved instinctively, her hands jerking the wheel right. The van veered toward the edge of the road, the side with the drop-off. Diana overcorrected, trying to steer back left, but the van's momentum was wrong. She felt the right wheels leave the pavement, felt the van tilting. In her rearview mirror, Diana saw herself screaming, saw the van at an impossible angle, saw sky through the windshield. Then the van rolled. Diana experienced the crash in fragmented moments. The windshield shattering, the world rotating, the sound of metal crunching, food containers exploding around her, her body held by the seatbelt but whipped violently. The van rolled once, twice, falling down the embankment, smashing through small trees and bushes. It came to rest on its side about 30 feet below the road, wedged against a boulder. Diana hung in her seatbelt. The van tilted 90 degrees. She could smell gasoline and crushed food. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. Her left arm hurt badly, possibly broken, but she was alive. She unbuckled her seatbelt and fell sideways, landing painfully on what had been the van's right side, but was now its bottom. She crawled through the wreckage toward the rear doors, which had sprung open in the crash. She squeezed through, emerging into the cool evening air. Diana crawled up the embankment to the road. Her phone had survived in her pocket. She called 911, reported the accident, and sat on the shoulder waiting for help, staring at the wrecked van below. The deer was nowhere to be seen. Paramedics arrived within 20 minutes. They treated Diana's injuries, the forehead cut, the broken arm, various bruises and contusions, and transported her to the hospital. The catering delivery was cancelled. Her boss visited her in the hospital that night, relieved Diana had survived, unconcerned about the lost food or van. "You're alive," he said. "That's what matters. The company has insurance. You can't be replaced." Diana spent 2 days in the hospital. The doctors were amazed she'd survived the crash, with relatively minor injuries. A van rolling down an embankment usually resulted in far worse outcomes. Diana was lucky, they said. But Diana didn't feel lucky. She felt confused and terrified, because she remembered what had happened with absolute clarity. The mirror had shown her the future. She'd seen her own crash at 6:47 p.m. She'd stopped the van to avoid that time. Then the crash had happened anyway, at approximately 6:48 p.m., close enough to the predicted time that Diana couldn't dismiss the connection. The mirror had shown her the future, and the future had happened despite her attempts to avoid it. Diana researched precognition, premonitions, and prophecy during her recovery. She found countless stories of people who'd dreamed of disasters before they occurred, who'd felt sudden urges to avoid planes that later crashed, who'd experienced visions of their own deaths. Most stories were anecdotal, unprovable. But Diana's experience was different. She'd seen the future multiple times in her mirror, seen a specific time, and the event had occurred at almost exactly that time, despite her efforts to prevent it. Was the future fixed? Could it be changed? Diana had tried to change it by stopping the van before 6:47 p.m., but the crash had happened anyway, just 1 minute later. Maybe she'd delayed it slightly, but she hadn't prevented it. The deer, the swerve, the roll down the embankment, all of it had been destined to happen, shown to her in advance, but unchangeable. Diana returned to work 6 weeks later with a cast on her arm. She drove a replacement catering van, doing the same routes, the same deliveries. But now she was afraid of mirrors. Every time she glanced at the rearview mirror, she feared seeing another vision, another glimpse of a terrible future she couldn't prevent. For 3 months, the mirrors remained normal. Diana began to relax, to convince herself that the September 13th incident had been a one-time anomaly, a glitch in reality that wouldn't repeat. Then, on December 19th, 2017, while driving on Interstate 25 during a snowstorm, Diana glanced in her rearview mirror and saw herself. Herself from a different angle, eyes wide with terror, mouth open in a scream. In the mirror vision, snow was falling heavily, and Diana could see headlights approaching fast from behind, too fast, the vehicle unable to stop on the icy road. In the mirror vision, the clock read 3:22 p.m. Diana checked her current time, 3:09 p.m. 13 minutes until whatever she'd seen would happen. Diana immediately took the next exit, pulling off the interstate into a gas station parking lot. She parked far from the road, turned off the engine, and waited. She would not be on the interstate at 3:22 p.m. She would not give the vision a chance to come true. She watched the clock. 3:15 p.m. 3:18 p.m. 3:22 p.m. came and passed. Diana sat in safety, nothing terrible happening. 3:25 p.m. She waited 5 extra minutes to be absolutely certain, then pulled back onto the interstate entrance ramp. A semi-truck, jackknifed across 2 lanes ahead, blocked the interstate. Traffic was stopped. Diana could see emergency vehicles arriving. The accident must have happened at approximately 3:22 p.m., exactly when the mirror had shown her something terrible. But Diana hadn't been there. She'd avoided it. Or had she? Diana thought about it carefully. The mirror had shown her in danger on the interstate at 3:22 p.m. She'd exited the interstate before that time. Had she changed the future? Or had the mirror shown her exiting the interstate, and she'd simply fulfilled the vision by doing so? Diana couldn't tell. The future the mirror showed was ambiguous. Was it what would happen? Or what would happen if she didn't change course? Was she seeing destiny or warning? Over the following months, the mirror showed Diana 3 more visions. Each time, she saw herself in danger at a specific future time. Each time, she altered her behavior, taking different routes, stopping, slowing down. And each time, She avoided direct harm. But each time, she learned later that something dangerous had occurred near the time the mirror had predicted. An accident she would have been part of, a road closure she would have encountered, a threat she would have faced. Diana came to understand that the mirror was showing her possible futures, outcomes that would occur if she continued on her current path. By seeing these visions, she gained the ability to choose differently, to avoid the dangers. The future wasn't fixed, but it also wasn't completely changeable. Certain events were going to happen: the September 13th crash, the December 19th pileup. But Diana could position herself to avoid being caught in them. She was seeing and navigating around disasters that occurred whether she was present or not. Diana still works for the catering company, though she's reduced her hours and avoids long-distance deliveries. She drives carefully, always aware of her mirrors, always watching for visions of dangerous futures. The visions come less frequently now, once every few months, sometimes less. She's learned to trust them. When the mirror shows her something terrible at a specific time, she alters her plans. She stops, takes a different route, stays home. She's become skilled at recognizing the difference between a normal reflection and a vision. There's a slight shimmer, a quality of light that's different, and the angle is always wrong, always showing her from a perspective that shouldn't be possible in a mirror. Diana has never told anyone about the visions. How could she explain? "My rearview mirror shows me the future" sounds insane, but the visions are real, and they've saved her life multiple times. She's grateful for them, even though they're terrifying. She wonders why it happens. Why her? Why mirrors? Is she somehow sensitive to future timelines, able to see ahead in ways most people can't? Or is everyone's mirror showing them possible futures, but most people don't notice, dismissing the brief visions as tricks of light or imagination? Diana doesn't know. She only knows that when she looks in her rearview mirror, she might see not the road behind her, but the road ahead. The dangerous moment waiting at a specific time. The crash or collision or disaster she needs to avoid. The mirror gives her a chance, a warning, a glimpse of what will happen if she doesn't change course. And Diana has learned to change course. She's learned to trust the impossible visions, to alter her path, to navigate around the dangers that the mirror reveals. She's alive because she saw her death in advance and chose a different road. Late at night, Diana sometimes sits in her parked car and stares at the rearview mirror, wondering what it might show her. Most of the time, it's just a normal mirror, reflecting the street behind her, the darkness, the quiet night. But occasionally, rarely, it shimmers and shows her something else, herself from an impossible angle, at a future time, facing some danger she hasn't encountered yet. And when that happens, Diana pays attention. She memorizes the time shown in the vision, the location, the circumstances. And when that moment approaches in real time, Diana makes sure she's somewhere else, on a different road, facing a different direction, safe. The future, Diana has learned, can be seen but also changed. The mirror shows what will happen, but seeing it gives her the power to choose differently. She drives through her life now, with one eye always on the mirror, watching not just where she's been, but where she's going, navigating around dangers that exist in times not yet reached, but already visible to those who know how to look. The mirror shows the future. Diana changes it, and she stays alive, day by day, vision by vision, choice by choice, always one step ahead of the disasters that would claim her if she didn't look carefully at her reflection and see not herself as she is, but herself as she will be if she doesn't change course right now.